Our question at this time concerns where Cain got his wife. You know, that's a question that's been asked from time to time, and folks wonder, well, when you look in the Old Testament, you read about Adam and Eve having children, and you read about two boys here. You read about Cain and Abel in Genesis chapter 4. And then the next thing you find as you read Genesis chapter 4 is that whenever Abel was killed by Cain, the Bible says there in Genesis chapter 4 that Cain went and he found himself a wife. It says, he went out in verse 16, Genesis 4:16, went out from the presence of the Lord, and he dwelt, he says, in the land of Nod, that was east of Eden. Verse 17 says, Genesis 4:17, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he built a city, and called the name of that city, the name of his son, Enoch. And people will say, whoa, wait a minute, where did he get a wife? Well, all I've read about was Adam and Eve had two boys, and then here Cain has killed one of the boys, and now all of a sudden we've got a wife. Where did she come from? You know, was there another creation somewhere? Did something happen? I mean, and throughout time there's been those who have been, you know, questioning the reality of the Bible and saying that this is somehow contradiction to talk about Cain having a wife, whenever the creation account talks about Adam and Eve and so forth. Well, really, the question is answered in chapter 5. In chapter 5 of the book of Genesis, we find a retelling, if you will, of the creation and how that God had made Adam, and how it says male and female. Genesis 5 verse 2. Male and female he created them and blessed them, and called the name Adam, he said, as in the day that they was created. And verse 4 says, the days of Adam, and it says, after he begot Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. Please understand a few things. Number one, when we read about the genealogy of anyone in the book of Genesis especially, but whenever we read about the genealogy of folks all through the Old Testament, God's intention is not to establish the family tree of everyone in the world. The intention of God in the Old Testament especially is to show folks the family tree, if you will, the genealogy that leads to Christ. It is one that is reflected in Luke chapter 3 also, if you'd like to read that a little later. We're focusing in Genesis 4 and 5 right now, and notice that the genealogy is showing us that which will lead to the Messiah, that which will lead to Christ. In fact, as you continue to read Genesis 5, if one just looks at it in a cursory reading, they might think that all that happened in Genesis 5 was these patriarchs all had one son apiece. Well, that's really not what happened. It wasn't that they just had one son apiece. It's just that one son was named specifically because that was the one through whom Messiah would finally come. Of course, led to Noah, then Noah and his family, and on down through. So when you back up to Genesis 4, we read, in fact in Genesis 5, we read that Adam had sons and daughters. It is not out of the question to say that there were more children even than Cain and Abel at the time of Genesis 4. Why do you say this? I say this because when Cain, God gives the punishment to Cain, he says, my punishment is greater than I can bear. He said, you driven me this day from the face of the earth. He said, I'll be a fugitive and vagabond. He said, somebody might try to kill me. Genesis 4:14. Who would that be? What he's talking about is my brother, some of my brothers and my sisters might try to kill me. See, Cain and Abel were not Adam and Eve's only children. And whenever we understand it as the Bible, what the Bible is doing with giving us just specific ones to lead us to Christ, and then tells us, by the way, Adam and Eve had a bunch of other sons and daughters, then it is not hard to realize that Cain's wife is going to either be a sister, there's going to be a niece, someone like that. And it is from his own family that he would get a wife and then raise up children and so forth, and then we read about their genealogy through the rest of Genesis chapter 4 and on through. So that's where Cain got his wife.